phenomenon we've seen over the last 10 years or so is the phenomenon of the alienated youth. These are students that are in the school that because of their problems they may be experiencing, they act out in some way, and sometimes their acting out becomes lethal. I think you can see students that have had problems in the past, and the problems in the past are usually the most predictive of violent behavior. Kids that use explosives have probably ruminated a little bit more, probably put a little bit more thought into it about what they're going to do, and it's more of a planned as opposed to an impulsive act.
Good morning, Truman. How may I help you?
There's a bomb in the building. If you don't get everyone out, somebody's gonna get hurt.
Unfortunately, bomb threats are becoming more prevalent on school campuses. The best way for you to maximize the safety of your students while minimizing property damage or lost class time is to have a good plan in place. There are three main types of threats. There is the written threat. That can come either through the mail, by a note left at the scene, or by fax or email. No matter the form of the written threat, you should always be careful not to throw away any evidence. A package should be considered suspicious if it has no return address. It might be addressed simply to principal without a direct name. It could include a number of stamps for postage, as someone sending a bomb is unlikely to have brought it to a post office to be weighed. It might also have an oily substance on the package, as most explosives have a petroleum base.
Lady, get everybody out the building. If you don't hurry, somebody's gonna get hurt.
The second type of threat is a verbal threat. Verbal threats can be delivered face-to-face or, more commonly, over the phone.
There's a bomb in the building. If you don't get everyone out, somebody's gonna get hurt.
What do you do when you have a bomb threat? The majority of the bomb threats that you're going to get are the kid on the phone, there's a bomb in the building, and hangs up. That's your lowest level of threat.
The third type is when you get no warning. This is most often what happens if there is a legitimate bomb on the premises. The best way to avoid this situation is to limit access to the school by people who shouldn't be there and by keeping an eye on troubled youngsters.
Students that have had disciplinary problems, students that have had problems getting along with their classmates, students that have had shown problems with managing their anger and managing their feelings, students that have had problems adjusting in school because of behavioral problems or academic problems are probably most at risk.
If you do receive a threatening phone call at your school, your prearranged bomb threat plan should go into action. The operator should have at his or her disposal a device to record the call.
I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time hearing you. Could you say that again, please?
The operator should also try to keep the caller on the line for as long as possible.
Is keep them on the phone. Do anything you can to keep them on the phone. Put them on hold, talk to them, talk wacky stuff, anything that keeps them on the phone and talking. The more they talk, the more they slip up. We've had cases where they were asked their names and they gave it. So, I mean, these kids get all hyped up. The more you can get them hyped up, the better it is.
There's a bomb in the building. If you don't get everyone out, somebody's gonna get hurt. Hurry up!
It's also important for the operator not to hang up the phone once the caller has hung up. Keeping the line open makes the call easier to trace. Caller ID is also a good tool to use if your school has it installed. You may also be able to use star 57 to track the call that came in. After the threat has been made, the operator should notify the principal immediately. The principal should then determine if a call to authorities is necessary. In all cases, it is recommended. A predetermined threat assessment team is then assembled at a predetermined command center. The threat assessment team should include the principal, a teacher with a thorough knowledge of the premises, a counselor or social worker who can report if there has been any unusual unrest at the school recently, a member of the custodial staff, since they have the keys to all of the rooms, and a security officer if the school has one. The goal of the team is to make a quick assessment of the threat and to quickly determine whether or not an evacuation is needed. It is not recommended that an evacuation take place every time there is a threat made.
One of the things that saved a lot of kids' lives in Columbine was the fact that they locked them down in their rooms, that the movement was minimal. That's what we like to see done. If a bomb threat comes in, rather than evacuate the kids right away, go through your process of threat analysis, but keep the kids in the room and have that teacher and somebody to assist that teacher search their rooms first. Then you know that classroom's fine. And then you know where the kids are. Because what happens if you evacuate and you've evacuated these kids directly into the path of the explosive?
Another reason for not evacuating immediately is that you may end up giving the caller exactly what he wants. Often the goal of the threat is merely to disrupt the school's operation. There are several things to have in place when the threat assessment team needs to meet. First, you should have a designated command post and an alternate post. Meeting in the same place each time would just allow a real bomber to know exactly where and when you will meet. In the rare case that he wanted to do some damage, he would know right where you are. The designated post must have communication. Two-way radios are recommended, along with phone lines. It's important that radios not be used to transmit until an area has been searched and pronounced clear, as transmission could set off an actual device. The room must be of adequate size, and it should include a map of the school. When you assess the threat, you should consider several things, like the relative age of the suspect, the specifics of the call.
If a caller calls up and says, I placed a device in your boiler room, well, he might have knowledge. If I place your device in your sub-level boiler room, then does he know your facility? Sure he does, because he's been there.
You need to consider if there has been recent unrest at the school, or if there are kids who've made threats recently. Have there been unauthorized entries recently? Has a student recently been expelled or an employee fired? What's the weather like? Nicer weather brings more threats. Important school events, like exams, tend to bring more threats. And if there are any known suspects with a tendency towards violence, the threat is increased.
Don't have a bomb threat plan that says you don't have to do anything because most of these threats don't turn into anything. You're asking for trouble. These threats, just because the statistics say that when you get a threat, it most likely will not happen, it's that other part after most likely is the one that comes and bites you.
After you have assessed the threat, you need to evaluate the danger. To determine if the threat is credible, go back to the call. Was it specific to your school? Did the caller describe the type of explosive device? Does the caller have knowledge of the facility? The more knowledge the caller has of either the explosive or the facility, the more real the threat is. Once you've evaluated the threat, you will find that it usually falls into one of four categories. For a low-level threat, or one you don't give much credence to, you should, at a minimum, notify law enforcement and continue monitoring the situation. It is also recommended that you make a search of the area. For a level 2 threat, you should notify law enforcement and initiate a search without evacuation. A threat reaches level 3 when an actual device or suspected device is found. Level 3 threats begin with a notification of law enforcement. Secondly, a search is initiated. Upon discovering a device, evacuation becomes mandatory.
Once something is found, your jobs are over. But guess what? And here's the bad part. Guess who does the searches? You all. Not police, not us. You all know your homes. That school's your home. You know what's there and what doesn't belong.
Searches should be done by two-person teams. Those teams should be determined well before an incident ever occurs. Usually, personnel are assigned to the areas they know best. Two-person teams should be used, and each team should bring with them a flashlight and batteries to search dark areas and corners, colored tape to mark off areas that have already been searched, a notepad and pen to jot down information if a device is found, rubber gloves to search through the garbage, and some form of communication, preferably two-way radios. It's important that radios not be used to transmit until an area has been searched and pronounced clear, as transmission could set off an actual device. It is also best to be shielded and have as much distance between you and the school when you begin transmitting. Public access areas of the school should be searched first, since they are the ones most easily accessed. The two-person teams go room by room. Every part of the room is searched. The room is divided in half, with each person taking one side. They should search from floor to ceiling. Once each person has searched one side, they change sides and repeat the process. Every part of the room should be searched, including restroom facilities, garbage cans, and even drop ceilings. Once a room has been cleared, tape should be put on the door to indicate that the room is clear. The search also needs to include outside areas of the building, including cars parked nearby. Cars should be searched by sight only. No attempt should be made to open a car. If a device is found, one of the searchers should note as much about it as possible on a notepad. That person needs to be available to the bomb squad when they arrive. Once a device is found, an orderly evacuation should begin.
If for some reason you decide to evacuate, and you're doing it the same way you do a fire drill, you know, have everybody march to a certain part of the parking lot, that's not the way to go. Do it, it's a whole different ball game here. You go in places that are protected, that you have cover.
The evacuation should be done in such a way as to keep driveways and entrances clear for emergency vehicles. No one should be allowed re-entry into the building, as their safety should not be compromised to retrieve material possessions. Students should be told to bring the belongings they have with them on evacuations. Students should not, however, go to their lockers or other parts of the school to retrieve personal belongings. Search teams will be able to do their jobs quicker if they don't have to go through numerous book bags. When the bomb squad arrives, several things should be made available to them. They should be given a map or blueprint of the school grounds. The operator who took the call or person who received the threat should be available to provide details about the call. And the person who found the device should be available to provide a description of it. If you have a good bomb threat plan, you can minimize the disruptions to your school while maximizing the safety of your students. A good bomb plan is one that includes a plan of action where everyone on the team knows his assignment and carries it out quickly and efficiently. Threat assessment teams and search teams should be selected ahead of time, and they should practice their routines. Evacuation and bomb threat procedures should be practiced so that if and when a real situation arises, everyone is ready. The majority of bomb threats are hoaxes, but you need to prepare in case yours is the one that isn't.
When somebody calls in a bomb threat to a school, you know what kind of crime that is? It's a felony. It's a felony disorderly conduct to call a bomb threat into a school. And one of the things that are going to stop these things from happening, prosecute these kids. Don't just think about throwing them out of school, prosecute these kids. If the end result of their pranks or the ways they do this result in a prosecution, do you think the other kids are going to do this if they think they're going to get caught?